kind of circle back very quickly, because you said something that at the time I really wanted to kind of delve a little bit deeper into, but I didn't want to break the flow of the storytelling, so I'm getting some great information.
Worrying.
Oh, you should be. Oh, you should be. You mentioned, firstly, I didn't know that grandma left when you were 2. I didn't know that. And also very much like mum as well, I know that mum's parents left when she was quite young.
Yeah.
And I know that she was also raised with her grandparents. You mentioned something earlier, or we were mentioning something earlier, separation anxiety disorder. And I also think, on the basis of some of the conversation we were having last week,
right,
about the relationship and the dynamic between parents and siblings and the generational gap, in a very short space of time, some of the things that I had made absolutes in my head about my parents and the why, all of a sudden those cases were back under for appeal and review. Because you're like, hey, wait there. You didn't give me this evidence in the first trial. I didn't have any of this stuff. Now, I want to take you back to a time, and I want you to tell me how you felt seeing what I'm about to describe.
Right.
Between the ages of, and please correct me because you'll know better than me, between the ages of, I'd say about 4 and 8, that's when I could really viscerally remember. Anytime you were leaving to go and do stuff in missionary work on the foreign missions, that period at the airport before you went through to the terminal,
yes,
Dad, I think the only way I can describe it, I was inconsolable.
Yeah. Yes.
I would cry and cry and cry. And sometimes growing up now, I used to feel sorry for Mum because there was nothing anybody could say to me, Dad. When I say there's nothing anybody could say, there was nothing anybody could say to me. Dad, what do you think? And I'm going to ask you to do something that's really, really horrible, because there's no way you can do it because you're only one person. But if you could, because you're a person that a lot of the time when people want to express how they're feeling or they need someone to speak to that they think is going to understand how they're feeling, they'll come to you. What did that do to a whole generation of people, Dad, who got used to not seeing their parents? And historically, throughout also Black culture, we've heard about in horrible times in history where children would be stolen from parents.
Right.
And when you think about it, it was happening the other way as well, right? Because parents would then be stolen from children. So now this was much different because, well, on the face of it, it would feel much different because the context was within the Commonwealth. You're now going to leave somewhere where you're okay, but maybe you're surviving, and you're now being given the opportunity to go somewhere where you can thrive.
Yeah.
So the justification of why is completely there. But nobody's setting up any solutions for the emotional trauma of a generation of kids.
Indeed.
Whose critical bonding periods with parents who would then call them to a country they didn't know to have a relationship with a person they did not have.
Yes.
Dad, talk me through the first basis of you realizing that grandma wasn't there. Can you actually remember that?
Yes, you can. And it leaves you feeling a sense of abandonment.
Wow.
In the strangest way. Why? Because the other, let's call them siblings, because really you grew up like brothers and sisters anyhow. It was the fact that the other siblings in that regard had their parents coming in and out at a regular interval.
Right.
So although they are with grandma, but yet come every holiday, come every period of, when they have a break or from work or whatever, they would come home, what we call home, to see their children. And as much as they're your uncles and aunties and bigger cousins, they were not your parents. You know what I mean? And you having to deal, even as a young child, with that situation where you're seeing love and attention being given to the others. And in that moment of time or in that season of time, you realize that your parents are not there. You know what I mean? And you don't know when they're going to be there. So therefore, you have to live with that sense of rejection, perhaps, because that's what you're feeling, whether it's reality or not, the sense of rejection. And it was not a society that the children mental condition were taken into account. It was almost an accepted fact that that's how the dice is rolling. So therefore deal with it. But for the children, it had that kind of impact, and for some negative, for some they get over it and turn that negativity into a plus, isn't it? Because it makes you become so much more conscious that you have to achieve things, you have to get to where you should get to, not because you're coerced by parents as they normally would do, but you have to develop that inner strength to do the things that are necessary, for example, like studying and going to make sure you get to school on time, make sure you are dealing with the issues and find, as it were, answers to questions that comes your way and make sure it's right. So yeah, it was very traumatic in more ways than one, and having to overcome it is in the strangest of way. You would have wanted your parents to be there for that added security, comfort, reassurance in times when you're going through things and you don't understand why people don't ever see it your way. You know what I mean? And where, in terms of the upbringing, because of the burden of responsibility on you and my grandmother, you see, she don't have time to go into the baby talks and lead you in by the hand into why that shouldn't be done that way or that shouldn't. It was just a simple command: don't do it. And there's no given explanation for why you shouldn't do it. You see what I mean? So you're either going to be conforming to that simple instruction, or you're going to say, well, until I understand why I shouldn't, I'm going to do it. And that was perhaps to a greater degree myself. And there are times, even within my older years, I still see that trait in certain respect. And it worked a great deal for me because compared to most people my age and position, they haven't achieved as much because they don't have that go-get, irrespective of whatever the situation may be. I'm going to do it.
Do you know what, Dad? Just as you were talking, something that really jumped out to me was I think it's actually a wit thing and I think it's generational. That the need and want for children of parents from a certain time period and age, that word achieve. And I think for a lot of kind of, obviously, my generation and maybe the one coming up, but not crazily, but definitely my generation and above, that sometimes the need to achieve became almost like regimental. To the point where it would become it would create conflict because yes, you want to do well. Nobody wants to go into an exam and do well. But I would say that there was always the added pressure that if you didn't get here, irrespective of how hard I tried, that if you don't do that, then you didn't revise.
Right. Yeah.
Now, that would then sometimes, obviously, and I'm going to tell on myself. Do you remember when I hid my report in the cabinet outside in the outhouse and when we were staying close?
Yes.
And Mum, when she found it, and and obviously then I had to explain to you, firstly, why you, well, it wasn't why you, it was, your mum told me that this is your report, and I was like, yeah, I know. And then your first was like, why did you lie? And then, but I could never get to the point where I was just like, well, I kind of felt a little bit of, and I know sometimes that I didn't work as hard as I could have.
Right.
Because if I was just like, well, I'm coasting, this is going to be easy, I would work hard where I needed to work hard. And then if I could take a little, break, I'd take a little break. But listening to you, the sense of the need for achievement came from a place where your ability to achieve meant that you would be in control of what your world looked like, felt like, what moved.
Yes. And
I never sat there and thought when I was, sometimes, and I don't mean this in a horrible way, when I was cursing you in my head, your mum went, oh, I've got a device in this room, have you got a computer, like what the devil want me to do? Yeah. There was no part of me that sat there and just went, this is based on the fact that my parents lost their parents and gained some new parents. And the trauma of that has carried through with them to the place where they're like, no, you have to be in a position where you get to call the shots.
Yes.
Because if you're in a position where you don't get to call the shots, we don't want you to feel that.
Yeah. Yeah. True. Yes, I fully agree with that, and that is one of the reason why certain culture, I mean, we just use the word, seems so much more successful because you got that driving force.
But Dad, the thing is that yes, but it's also, especially because I hope that these conversations are building bridges, right? So I've always seen the driving force of needing to achieve going that way of the bridge. I've very rarely seen the traffic going the other way. What I feel like you've done in opening up just in that moment, it may not be everybody, but there's a large amount of people that sat there and went, yeah. So that's why.
Oh yes. Yeah, it's very, and it was one of the things that we allude to when we talk about what children respecting their parents is about. Yes, because you want the best for your child more than what you had. That was the whole thing, is that we're going to do everything.
So your basis is, I'm not going to tell you the level of sacrifice I go through every day for you to be a better version than what I am, with more than what I had. But the only thing I need you to do is respect the level of offering and sacrifice.
Right, yes.
Because that's what you're really asking.
Absolutely.
Because you're going, when you wake up and you need to eat breakfast, you're not coming to me and asking me, how did I go in?
Yes.
Now, warranted, obviously you live in a society where, well, that you give and you provide. But to come from a place where you would wake up to hear my great-grandmother requesting God and his assistance to feed her house.
Yes.
And then you get to a next generation and then you realize, right, I'm not going to let you necessarily see that. What I'm going to need you to do is to respect what...
That's right. That is it. And that is this problem that, say, our generation is facing.
Yeah, I get it.
With our children. They don't have any, they have things, but it's not what you want. It's not what you're looking for.
Right.
You just want them to appreciate that it took something to bring them to where they are. And you're desiring for them to have so much more, so that they're never having to go back to what you've passed through and what you've encountered. You know what I mean?
Dad, do you know what? You just said something amazing. In identifying part of the problem, I think you've also given a massive hint to the solution. Last week we said that when we were coming up with kind of talking about building those bridges generationally, we said that it was communication, compromise, and there was one other word. There was one other thing that we added to it: communication,
respect,
compromise, and respect. Parents being able to sit down. Because I think the only thing that makes talking about something traumatic or hard easy is if you think the person that you're talking to either A, wants to understand, or B, has the capacity to understand.
Yes.
And Dad, I feel like I learned that my brother's nickname that you gave him didn't come from you. And for my grandma to come up with a name like that,
yes,
I would have never said that that's grandma's kind of personality or nature. To call him Waldron, which would make me think, what kind of people do you know, grandma, for that to kind of, does that make sense, Dad?
Of course.
And then you're leaning into, and I used to say this to you, that one of the things I used to really enjoy about grandma was that sometimes I would observe her in personal, intimate moments.
Yeah.
Sometimes when she was thinking really deeply, Dad, she would sometimes just look up and go, "Oh, Mum."
Yes.
And for whatever, in that moment, like I guess she would be wondering or thinking about whatever my great grandmother would say to her.
Indeed.
Does that make sense, Dad? And like, there was times when, do you remember when I did Bugsy Malone? And like, Neverhall had kicked off because I was like, we don't think he should be leaving for half the year, and And then I moved to that school in London, and I ended up living obviously with grandma for like 3.5 months or whatnot. And Dad, it was so. There were moments where I almost felt like I was getting what you didn't.
Yes.
Dad, I was so naughty as a child, right? Dad, I mean, let's run through some of the repertoire. Okay, taking my mum's engagement ring and give it to Nanny Turner. Jumping in the milkman's cart and driving it because he wouldn't let me drive it. Calling the fire brigade at church. Just stuff. Just crazy stuff.
Not to mention taking my car up that long pit hill. I mean, that is, I'm still traumatized by it.
Yeah, but you're then kind of also telling people
still have the
heebie-jeebies. Yeah, but you're also telling people I might have been driving without a license. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's feeling it's a bit hot in here. He's okay.
Yes. Okay.
Where was I?
Yes. About grandma treating you. Yeah.
So, I think sometimes, obviously looking back now, because sometimes I'd get the hot chocolate at night before, and I'd be like,
yeah.
And I would sleep in your old room, which was right next to the kitchen.
That's right.
And so explain this to me, Dad. What is it about grandparents where, do you think this is true? If they weren't able to give it to
their children. Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, for most parents, you're on a learning curve. To look after a child. Here you are, no experience, very limited information. You're going by your pure maternal instinct to look after a child. So sometimes you get it right, sometimes you get it wrong. Yeah. Now,
do you know how deep this conversation is that we're having?
Indeed.
Dad, there are like just...
Yeah.
And I just think there's so many people that are going to... Whoa. There are so many people it's going to help.
Yes, I think so.
Because there were like sky-high walls, Dad.
Absolutely.
That only... It was the simplest thing to make the whole thing come down. Sorry, I just completely cut you in what you were saying.
So with your grandparents, now they are already seasoned.
Right.
You know what I mean? They learn and they know now what to do to rear a child. But by the time that they come into the full knowledge of it, their children is already grown up. So having your grandchild,
It means you get to.
yeah, you get to now rectify that and pour into them the love, because you have both the time, you have the situations are different, and so you have that. Now you make mention of my mom. Sometime would say, just call his mom, her mom, and you wonder why would she just say mom? It's again suffering from the same traumatic
Yeah.
separation
Dad.
syndrome.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? Because she taken away from her at a young age, robbed of her children.
Yeah.
You get what I mean? Literally been torn, really.
Yeah.
To come to work, and then here you times you think there are things that you just want to sit down with somebody more senior than you, and you can pour your heart out to them, and they'll have an understanding or even have the advice to give you, while they're not readily available right now. And to talk to them, you can't, because where they're living, there might not be any telephone for you to do that. And you may write letters, and it can only say so much. So you have that, and that is what many experience now with what's going on now. And that's why I say to any parent, to any children, time spent with your parents are invaluable.
Yeah, massively.
Just forget about all of these people you hang out that neither, taking you anywhere in a hurry. See them, take time out with them, ask them, talk to them, like you just said here. There are things you've learned in the last hour that, imagine, for most of your life you had not known it, because the tendency for most people is to always looking forward to what hasn't yet been. You know what I mean? Rather than looking at what is and what was.
Dad, let me ask you a question. There'll be some people listening who don't have a great relationship with their parents.
Mm-hmm.
So for some of them, it will be triggering emotive feelings of either resentment, anger, hatred, bitterness.
Mm-hmm.
Now, these are all emotionally and mentally and spiritually obstructive things.
Yes.
That will keep you in a bound place and stop you from moving forward. How would you advise anybody that has those dynamics within their parental structure to be able to still start the journey with us? Because it may not be, okay, I'm going to go to their house, but
yes.
Would it be a case of you lean into a grandparent or an auntie or an uncle? How would you?
No, it is a leaning into yourself. Yes. And the best way to describe it, I was speaking to one of my leaders. In fact, it was in the Philippines, and they were talking that they were really hurting, and because of different things that was happening. And so somebody asked me, said, well, what advice would you give to this person who is hurting so badly? They said, why is this person hurting? I said, because they're afflicting themselves. I said, that's what do you mean by they're afflicting themselves? I said that what's causing the hurt is not the actual, it is the perception or what you think should happen.
Wow.
In other words, expectation.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? And in most cases, that is what is destroying relationship. That is the block in most people stepping out or stepping towards what they should do, is that they are blinded, they're blocked, they're hindered by their expectation of people, place, and things. See, that is the thing that is most destructive. When I first came to England, from Jamaica, I built up an expectation of what I think England is going to be. And if I was to choose one place, one building of what the whole of England was going to be, was Buckingham Palace.
Right. Your whole basis of
exactly,
yeah,
because that's what you see
yeah.
being promoted. Low, great, you love the
Some
soldiers,
big houses,
flowers
guard
everywhere,
to the door.
everybody, yeah. And that is, so when you landed at the airport and you're on your way from the airport and see those buildings with smoke popping up outside, you're thinking, well, hang on here. Did I come to a sugar factory? You see, and it almost killed you because why? You have already built up in your mind
And overinvested
in
the expectation.
the expectation. You see what I mean? And it's only when you now really get into the house and spend a few days walking around the suburbs and looking at, you know what I mean, you begin to say, oh my goodness, how did I get all of this? You see what I mean? How did I get to this point where I had so much belief, expectation? No. It's the same thing with relationship, with family, with all of that. People build, operate, function on their expectation. And when it don't work, so I asked the leaders, I said, when did that person tell you that they're going to be the best for you? They're going to never criticize you. They're going to give you anything you want. No, they never did. I said, so how did you get it? You put it inside of you. And it's the same thing that happens with both parents. When did those children tell you that they're going to work, as I said, hard and achieve things and come back and take care of you? When did they tell you that? Never. Same thing with children. When did your parents tell you that they're going to work their hard, earn cash in their savings, and when you reach a certain age and you squander your life with all kind of frivolous things, they're going to take out their money and give to you. When did they tell you that? So when you begin to break it down like that, you realize that most people are masochistic, self-inflicting.
Do you often think it's because you can get to a place where you're so obsessed with trying to prove someone wrong that you're willing to deform any version of right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
And when I say deform any version of right, that you will do things that compromise your own self-will, character, and belief.
Absolute.
In order to.
But then you see, this is where the problem is. It's all about you. It's really you doing that to you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And expecting those who are on the outside to understand what you've done to your inside. So I'm saying to you.
Wow. Yeah. And they're not even aware of it.
They're not even aware of it. And you're getting frustrated, you're getting angry, you're getting mad with everything and everyone. And no, nobody has done it. You build it up yourself. You fashioned it. You created it as an image. You put it in your heart. You believe it. You sign it off. You do all of these things. And when it begins to fall down, you have to attach it to somebody.
Right. Okay.
See what I mean?
Okay.
And it give you that false sense of justification that is somebody. No, nobody else didn't do nothing. I mean, you could walk on the street and somebody decide, okay, you know what? I'm going to abuse you. And they're following you around saying, oh, Sean, you're this, Sean, you're that, you think you're this. You would not, you put on your earphone, you know what I mean? And you go about your business. Because why? That person has no connection to you. So they can say whatever they want to say. But if you have an expectation of somebody who you're deemed as friend, family, whoever it may be, and they begin to say some things that you were never thought that they're going to say to you. You know what I mean? Then it begins to afflict your expectation.
Let me ask you a question. Is that why you think you're able to deal with conflict resolution the way you are?
So much so.
I've never seen a person that allows water to roll off their back as much as you. And can I be honest with you? Can I be completely honest? I also think it's some of the reason why I lean into some of the levels of,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the word is I want to use, Dad. Finality.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like in the dispensation of you, I feel like, let's say that we're a book, right?
Yes.
I feel like the New Testament, the New Testament was before the Old Testament. So I'm
Yes.
like, no. He's giving you love, lots of love and grace. You see over here, here's the law, here's the judgment.
Yeah.
And it comes from, and here was me, but I lean and I'm like, well, my dad's this because it's his job. And no, it's from an elevated place of understanding that my expectation of you is not diminished because that's how I'm going to go through the world so I never get hurt. No, my expectation of you is that though I hope you'll do the best.
Absolutely.
I am prepared for you to be human.
Yes, exactly.
And lean into the worst.
Indeed.
And me not put my whole basis of self-value and self-edification or
importance, name it,
on what you do or don't do.
And when you now move to the positive,
yeah,
which is to cultivate, then now that's when you really, transforming lives, because you now move to from the negative of expectation to the positive of cultivation. You see what I mean? Is what then give you the absolute feeling of greatness, because you're cultivating.
Dad, always a pleasure. Never
my pleasure indeed.
We just want to thank everybody for taking the time to hang out with us. Please like, subscribe, share, tell a friend. Also, we have some wonderful things coming up. My dad may have been writing a little bit, and we may have been planning some things that you can kind of come out and experience this with us live in the flesh. Guys, we hope you have a great rest of your day, rest of your week. We'll see you next week, same time, same place. Bye.
Stay blessed.